Joseph Beyrle, a paratrooper in two nations. Joseph Beyrle served in the United States Army during World War II. He also served in the Soviet Red Army. He is one of only two Americans in history to have fought in uniform for two allied nations against the same enemy. The misconception is that Beyrle simply switched sides or became a mercenary. He did neither. His journey was the result of capture, escape, recapture, and an accidental introduction to Soviet tank crews who refused to hand him over. The overlooked consequence of Beyrle's story is that it reveals how thin the line between prisoner and partisan could become in the final year of the war. Joseph Beyrle grew up in Muskegon, Michigan, the son of Russian immigrants who still spoke the language at home. That detail would matter later. He volunteered for the paratroopers because the pay was an extra $50 a month. The danger was not the selling point. By 1944, Beyrle had made more than 20 training jumps. He was assigned to I Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, the same regiment that would later become famous as the Band of Brothers. On June 6, 1944, Beyrle climbed into a C-47 bound for Normandy. His objective was to secure causeways behind Utah Beach. Anti-aircraft fire shattered the formation. Beyrle jumped into darkness, hit the ground hard, and landed alone somewhere near the village of St. Côme du Montana. He linked up with a handful of scattered paratroopers and spent the next several days blowing up bridges and ambushing German patrols. Then his luck ran out. Beyrle was captured during a firefight near a stone farmhouse. The Germans marched him east, away from the front. He spent the next 3 months in a series of prisoner camps. The food was thin soup and black bread. The work details were brutal. In September 1944, Beyrle and several others slipped away from a work detail near the Polish border. They walked east for 3 nights, following railroad tracks. They ran straight into a Soviet tank battalion. The Russians, understandably suspicious, held them at gunpoint for several hours. Beyrle started speaking Russian. Poor Russian, by his own admission, but Russian. He said his parents were from the old country. He showed his American paratrooper wings. The Soviet battalion commander made a decision that no manual covered. He offered Beyrle a rifle and a place in his unit instead of sending him to the rear. Beyrle said yes. He later explained that sitting in a rear area camp waiting for the war to end felt like surrender. He had not come this far to stop fighting. For about a month, Sergeant Beyrle of the United States Army fought as a private in a Soviet tank-borne infantry battalion. He carried a PPSH-41 submachine gun. He took part in a breakout from the Beyrle bridgehead in Poland. The fighting was vicious. The Soviets lost entire companies in a single afternoon. Beyrle was wounded twice during that month. The second time, a German machine gun round passed through his leg and lodged in his equipment belt. When the Soviets finally evacuated him to a rear hospital, they also notified the American military attaché in Moscow that an American paratrooper was fighting with their army. The Americans were not amused. Beyrle was technically listed as missing in action. His family back in Michigan had received a telegram stating he was presumed dead. He was repatriated in April 1945. The war in Europe ended 3 weeks later. He went home to Muskegon and walked into his own wake. Beyrle rarely spoke about the Soviet portion of his service. But he did keep 2 sets of medals, American Bronze Star and Purple Heart, Soviet Order of the Red Star. In 1994, President Bill Clinton hosted Russian President Boris Yeltsin at the White House. Joseph Beyrle was invited. He stood in the Rose Garden wearing both countries' medals. The lesson of Joseph Beyrle is not about switching loyalties. It is about refusing to stop fighting when every reasonable person would have sat down and waited. The war produced a million stories of survival. Beyrle's is one of the few where survival meant picking up a different rifle and going back in. Subscribe to War Machiner and share this if you value history that goes deeper. Make it an essay.